What's up, everybody? It's a Thursday morning. The Iceman's still out in Portland. He'll be going back home to Hartford later on this afternoon. But last night I had a treat. Matt and I watched a Raw is War from September 6, 1999. It took place in the Hartford Civic Center. I attended it. My sister attended it. Matt and Cassidy attended it. Matt was 7 years old. Cassidy was 5. And my girlfriend Peggy also went. And after watching this, I remember essentially the main things about this Raw because, being there, but it was 16 years ago. And it was just like totally awesome to watch something when you knew you were there. It's much like people going to WrestleMania, being there, living the event live, and then, going home and somewhere down the road watching that event, knowing that you were there, A lot of good stuff happened. And back then in 99, things were just like totally different than what they are now. The show basically kicked off with The Rock coming out. The Rock and Mankind were tag team champions, the Rock and Sock Connection. And The Rock cut his promo, and I go to Matthew. I'm just waiting for him to say, welcome. The Rock has finally come back to Hartford. I mean, the crowd was like crazy. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, this is the way announced teams should be today. Because Jim Ross, at some points throughout the show, was screaming at the top of his lungs. Jerry Lawler was very much into it. Ross and Lawler together were superb. So anyway, The Rock cut his promo, and they were going to have a tag team title match, and it was going to be up against Kane and X-Pac. Well, Mankind came out, and he was doing his funny little imitations of The Rock and whatnot. But anyway, Kane came out, and there was no X-Pac. And this was a great way to kick off the show. And during the match, Triple H came out with his sledgehammer, and he wanted to be Kane's tag team partner. Well, all in all, just to make a long story short, Kane didn't want him as his partner. And at the very end of the match, Triple H took the sledgehammer to Kane and totally destroyed him. Yeah, this was just like totally awesome. We saw the Acolytes, Bradshaw and Farouk. The Hardy Boys were there with Gangrel as the new Brood. Very young Hardy Boys, obviously. Matt Hardy looked so different back then. He looked sort of creepy, actually. Everybody thought that Jeff Hardy was the one who, got himself painted up and looked a little eerie. But back in 99, Matt Hardy looked a lot creepier than Jeff Hardy did. But we saw Edge and Christian. Christian had probably the longest hair anytime he was within the WWF. The Dudley Boys were there. We saw the Mean Street Posse. We also saw Briscoe and Pat Patterson go up in a match, against the Mean Street Posse. And, we saw Tess come out, the late Tess. There was just a lot of good stuff going on in the show. We saw Tori Robertson attacking Ivory, who was then the women's champion. Just a lot of good locker room segments. Crash Holly came out with Hardcore Holly. Remember Crash Holly coming out with the scale, carrying it all the time? And they had a good segment with the new Brood, the Hardy Boys, and Gangrel. That was sort of fun to watch. The main event, though, was the thing. Triple H was the World Heavyweight Champion. He came out with China, and he was facing the very over Billy Gunn. I mean, this is after Billy Gunn had left DX, turned to babyface, and the crowd was just wickedly into Billy Gunn. I remember watching this, when I was there, and I vaguely remember a lot of stuff. But this match was like this match was great. It was totally great. There was numerous occasions where you thought Billy Gunn, when you were there watching it live, you thought Billy Gunn was actually going to take the world title off of Triple H, but it wasn't to be anyway. There was a lot of interference and whatnot, and then obviously Triple H ended the match with a pedigree, but Kane came out towards the end. Shane McMahon was there. Kane ended up choke slamming Triple H, China, Shane McMahon. The crowd was just going furiously nuts. And after the match was the show was over, I said to Matt, I go, man, this was something that there was so much excitement in the air in Hartford. And it just seems like the fans nowadays just don't get in to wrestling like they used to. And this was a Raw that didn't have a lot of the main stars in matches, but they were involved in some sort of way. And this was back when I don't know if anybody remembers it when Edge and Christian used to come out through the crowd, much like Roman Reigns does now. And just a very, very great Raw to relive. Like I said, there's a lot of things that you didn't quite remember. Like the Ivory and Tori Robertson segment, you didn't actually see it when you were there, actually see it happen, but you saw it on the screen, on the monitors. And, this is what wrestling was all about back then. I mean, and the only thing, when we were watching this, they actually bleeped out a lot of the language, and it was sort of funny because when Billy Gunn came out, they announced him as Badass Billy Gunn, but anytime Billy Gunn or anybody else said the word ass on the show, it got bleeped out. It was sort of weird. It was just, I don't know, but yeah, it was a great show. If anybody ever gets the opportunity, any show from back, in the 99 year, I'm sure was great. But for me, I was living in East Hampton, Connecticut back at the time. And for me to go to a live Raw is War was like tremendous. And that is the only Raw is War that I ever attended. And it just brings back so many memories. I remember all the pyro going off, and it just like the crowd was just like, it was so loud you couldn't even hear yourself. So anyway, I just wanted to share that a little bit with you. I have the file on my flash drive, and what I'm going to do when I get the opportunity is I'm going to take some clips and I'm going to put it on the Iceman's Wrestling Extreme Facebook page. I'll have the clip opening up where Jim Ross announces that they're in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm going to have highlights probably of Triple H and Billy Gunn, probably the ending of that match because it was so exciting to watch. So, so for people here on YouTube that are in like the Connecticut area and whatnot, and if you get the opportunity to find this, it's definitely worth watching. I think it's a 700 meg AVI file. I think this file is. I'll have to double check it, but it's something I'm gonna put on a DVD and save it because it brings back a lot of memories. And like I said, I relived it last night, and there was so many things that I did not even recall that went on when I went to that show. Because again, then again, it was 16 years ago, and I've seen so many Raw is Wars. I've seen so many Raws. I mean, it's some pay-per-views are one thing, but trying to remember what went on in all the Raws and the Raws Wars, from a date standpoint, would be just like very, very difficult to do. So, anyway, this is the Iceman here on this Thursday morning. I'll be back home this afternoon. So, in the next day or two, if you're interested, go to the Iceman's Wrestling Extreme Facebook page. Just type in Iceman's Wrestling Extreme, go to the page, and you'll probably see some highlights from this Monday Night Raw from September 6th, 1999. And it's not Monday Night Raw, it's Raw is War. Peace out, everybody. Have yourself a great Thursday.